My mod should be over here shortly.
Okay.
All right, welcome in, welcome in. How's everyone doing? Hope everyone's doing great. We're going to get ready to get started here. Make sure as you come in, you're hitting that like button for me and share. Share the live if you'd like. That would mean a lot. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, I am honored to have an extraordinary woman whose life story truly reflects strength and resilience. From beginning a mother, from becoming a mother at 17 while growing up in the inner city of Baltimore to overcoming abuse and rebuilding her life. Her journey has been nothing short of inspiring, even in the face of the loss. And we all know how loss can affect us. She has continued to show up for not only herself, but her children, and she's so determined. Help me welcome Patrice Simmons. Welcome.
Hello.
Hey. All right, Patrice. With no further ado, we're just going to go ahead and jump in. I always let my audience know that this show is for my guest. This is for my guests to speak and tell their stories. So it's not going to be a lot of interruptions because I want them to be able to tell their story without any delays or any hiccups. So with no further ado, Patrice, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. I am Patrice Simmons. I am a mother. I am a writer. I am an author, published author. I am a woman of God, and I'm a daughter. Um, First, wanted to say I just give honor to God for just allowing me to be able to share this space and to share my story, to help other people overcome what I've been able to overcome with His grace and mercy in my life. And to thank Jamie for allowing me to be able to share my story in the space that she has created. So I would have to say that at around 17, life for me started to become very different because I found out that I was pregnant. I lost my virginity at 16. That was my real first relationship. I met my son's father at the mall. Um, we had a quick encounter with each other. He was my first, as I said before, lost my virginity to him. A couple months later, I found out I was pregnant with my son. Now, the interesting thing about this is that I wasn't going to keep the baby. It was plans to, have an abortion. So for months, the reason was because I was only 17 and I was still living at home, and tell my mother that I couldn't tell my mother that I was having a baby at that age. So I had to figure something else out in another alternative, and we both were okay with that. So, like I said, we were trying to figure out how we was going to be able to do it, like come up with the money and things like that. But we took too long with coming up with the money and really, really wanting to do that. So before I knew it, I was almost 6 months pregnant. So that was kind of like, yeah, done. Couldn't do that. But I couldn't tell my mother that I'm having a baby while barely graduating high school yet, because I was just like, no, my mother's very strict. She doesn't even know I lost my virginity, and she has this mindset that my kids, they don't do this, they don't do that, and especially not. I'm the youngest. I'm her baby, so I was like, oh, not my baby. So what wound up happening was, as the months got um, as the months progressed, my mother started noticing like a change in my body. She was like, Patricia, stomach's getting big. Like, you okay? What's going on with that? I'm like, yeah, I think I'm just eating a lot. Stomach is bloated. I'm just kind of like got gassy or whatever. So she really didn't put two and two together until, the summertime came and she was like, why is your stomach so firm like that? I was like, oh my gosh. So she sat me down and she asked me the truth. And I still, in that moment, couldn't tell her that I was actually having a baby because I didn't want to disappoint her. And I knew that that would be a disappointment for her with her daughter being 17. So I had to call my son's father over to say, hey, can you come tell my mother what's going on? Because there's no way I could tell her this. So he called her over and we had a conversation. He let her know that I was expecting, and she was hurt. She was really hurt, and that's understandable when you have high hopes for your children to go off to college or just to do things at a young age besides become a parent. I can understand where the disappointment came in. Obviously, at that time, I just didn't understand anything too much because I'm young, not really sure what's going on, and everything just happening so fast. But looking back now, like I can understand why she was disappointed, why she was hurt, and all those things. So I wound up keeping a baby. Obviously, I had my son, and I wound up moving out when I turned 18. I did graduate, and I moved in with my son's father. For a while, things were okay until things wasn't okay. He started to become possessive and controlling over me. And at that point, I was 18. I had just turned 18. So he started to become possessive and controlling, telling me what I can do, what I can't do. I also started to notice that he had patterns about him that he didn't have before, with like telling me he's going to be this place when he wasn't, and like just difference in his behavior. But when you're young, you don't really understand the fullness and the changes in people, because that was my first real relationship, and I had it when I was 16. He was my first. So I didn't really understand how to be with a man. Honestly, I didn't understand that. So I accepted a lot of behaviors because I didn't have the fullness of, I didn't have the full understanding and how a relationship is supposed to be in my way of seeing things.
Mm-hmm.
So as things went on, like I said, he started to become possessive and controlling with me. He started stealing money because I had to go to work. I had plans to go off to culinary school because I love baking and stuff like that. But once I got pregnant with my son, I had to put that on hold. And that was another reason why my mom was disappointed, because everything was I was everything was already set up for me to go to culinary school in Pennsylvania. I had got accepted and everything. So obviously, like I said, that had to be put on hold, um, and become a mother. So, you know, although I am happy with my choice with keeping my son and having him, it was a challenge because I didn't know who I was at 18. I'm just starting life. I'm just starting the world, in this relationship as well, not really understanding much of anything because everything is just coming at me so fast at a young age. And it was my first time even living with living with a man as well. So when you don't really have the understanding and you don't have the guidance that you really need at a young age, even at 18, these children are not really fully equipped at that age to
Right.
really get all that stuff. They really aren't. So for me, I'm just like, oh, okay, I guess this is normal for your boyfriend to be controlling over you and to take your money and to cheat on you, and other things is physical abuse, just like all those things that I went through with him. I'm not gonna say I thought it was normal, but I was like, okay, well, this is probably the best I'm going to get. So I might as well just accept that. So going through all that with him, you know, it just kind of made me feel like, well, maybe something I did wrong. Maybe I did something to deserve this. It was times where I would come home from work and I would find my son like in the closet because he said my son was crying too much and he just couldn't deal with it. And just, anytime I would confront him about anything as far as like the cheating and how he was with my son at times, it would just go to like physical. I shield a lot of that from my mother because she really didn't want me to leave out. She didn't want me to leave her home, but I felt the need to do that because I'm like, I'm having a baby. He already has his own place. Maybe I need to be in my own space and just kind of just venture off by myself and just get into the rim of that without my mom. Even though she was against it, she had to respect it because I'm 18. So what could she do about that too much? But one thing she always would tell me things like, well, Patrice, I don't think he's the one. And I was like, oh, you're just saying that. And I'm like, he didn't do anything. But I feel like mothers knows best. They see things before you see them. They just have that intuition about them. Like, I know what I'm talking about. You don't get it, but mothers feel things. Now that I'm a mom, I understand that. So, at some point, my relationship with his mother became better because it wasn't at first. So I got more comfortable with being around his family to where I was able to open up with them about just certain things that I was going through with him. And honestly, I was able to kind of escape that relationship with his mom's help. I'm not saying like a full escape, like she kidnapped me one night, but I'm just talking about she was able to give me like another option, like, oh, you can just come stay here. My son's going through things and all this stuff she was saying to me. So I was able to stay with her for a while. And then when I turned 19, I actually had to go back to live with my mom. So that was challenging, because now I'm feeling like I'm grown, all that
Right.
stuff. I got a baby, I'm grown, and what you gonna tell me? So at that point, my relationship with my mom wasn't the best. We had reached kind of like a rough patch. Um, she was dealing with some issues and things like that. So, we kind of didn't see eye to eye on certain things. Um, but then we were able to, at some point get to where we needed to be in our relationship to have those like heart to heart conversations and grow and get better. So after living with her, I wound up meeting my second child's father. And at this point, I was about maybe 2021. I was about going on 20. Sorry, I was going on 20. Met him at my job. And, for a while, things was okay with us as well. But I had a tendency when I was a lot younger to just move really quickly in relationship. I really didn't have standards. I really didn't even have a self-esteem. I didn't think highly of myself because when I was a child, I was bullied, and also growing up without my birth father and him dealing with drugs and being like um, neglected and just having like feeling like I don't have what I need as a child from my father. I kind of just accepted everything from a man. I'm not saying it's really his fault, but what I'm saying is that's part of the reason why I allowed like so much. So, yeah, so I met my second child's father around 20 years old. Um, and, we moved quickly in our relationship too, because like I said, you don't have standards, there's no boundaries, you just kind of accept any and everything. Somebody's talking a good game to you, it sounds good. Hey, I'm going to go with that. I wasn't really even attracted to him, but I just kind of just looking for love in all the wrong spaces, especially because I was looking for that fatherly love, but I was getting it from men as, instead of really getting it from my dad, even though I grew up with my stepdad, but it's different.
Right.
So, you know, getting that attention from him, and that was probably like the worst relationship I had because I dealt with even more abuse, um, physical and mental. But in that relationship, it definitely was way more mental than anything. We got married when I was 25 years old. I have two kids with him. Um, Roller coaster of things that I dealt with him. He had a drinking habit that progressed into alcoholism, where I mean, this was like a daily thing. He was drinking, wasn't paying the bills. We had eviction notices on our door like every month. Money was becoming missing. He was lying about certain things, all because of his abuse habit. I mean, his drinking habit. Like I said, he was verbally abusive to me. majority of our relationship. When I was pregnant with my son, it was only through the grace of God that my son came out healthy and normal, because I argued with him so bad throughout that whole entire pregnancy. It's only the grace of Jesus that my son came out fine. Um, then we get married, thinking things are going to go, I'm thinking things are going to get better. They did not. They got worse, and his alcohol got worse. Now, before we got married, he wasn't drinking as much, but it seemed like it progressed after we got married, it just progressed and got worse. Um, Everything just kind of had a ripple effect to it, just like one thing after another. Another thing with cheating, I went through that again. I just felt like I can't catch a break, like what's happening. I go from one bad relationship to another, to a point where it was so bad where I wound up moving into a shelter.
Mm-hmm.
I had to come to that point because there was no peace, and there was no peace in my home. And I always craved peace, because in my household growing up, um, a lot of my older teenage years was seeing abuse
Yeah.
from my parents, more
Mm-hmm.
so physical from my mom. And my peace was disrupted and disturbed for a long time, because I witnessed so much from my parents, um, in that aspect of abuse, that I always told myself that if I get into a relationship, I know I'm not going to deal with this, you know. So having that understanding for myself, because what I saw I didn't like, I was like, oh yeah, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to deal with this and all that stuff. I wound up not becoming the abuser, but I wound up being in I wound up being in something that I told myself that I would never be a part of. So it was so crazy. And my peace was disrupted. So I wound up having to move into a homeless shelter for like 3 or 4 months. And at that time, my children were young, and I didn't want to subject them to that space, because they're young. They don't understand what's going on. But I felt like that was the only option for me to have like any kind of like peace of mind, just any sense of like happiness, even if it's just for a moment. I just knew that it was too much turmoil in my house, just going through too many changes, that I needed a break. And at that time, I was dealing with depression. I was very depressed. I kind of isolated myself from my family. I wasn't talking to like my mom that much, even though she was starting to notice certain behaviors about me, that something was wrong. But I shielded as much as I could, because I have a tendency of like putting on a face, but inside it's other things there.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of did that a lot with her, but she could always see through that, because she's my mama. She could see through it.
Right.
And I just was like, I'm okay, all of that stuff, but I was hurting.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I just didn't know how to let her know that, Mom, I need you. Because part of me was still mad at her about certain things that I had witnessed growing up. So I was dealing with that childhood trauma, if you would say. Also being neglected by my dad. So dealing with that, along with dealing with stuff in my relationship. And at that point, I was only about 27, 28 years old with 2 kids. Yeah, talk about life, right? That's a lot. That's a
Mm-hmm.
lot. Um, and we're not taught in the Black community about therapy and like counseling, and just certain things I feel like we just aren't taught, or just is not talked about, or it's like, oh, Black people don't go to therapy. It's just kind of like that things like, we're just not against that, I guess. And for me, I was just never that person that wanted to, like, I always felt like they always want to tell you what you want to hear. They don't really care. So I felt alone, and I just isolated myself a lot. And yeah, I was just depressed for a long period of time. It took me about 3 years before I actually divorced my ex-husband, and the reason why it took me 3 years, because it took me that time to realize that this relationship is not going to work. This is not growing. This is not healthy. If I stay in this, then I'm going to not only is it going to affect my children, it's going to affect me as well.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I felt my parents didn't do that I did is that I left. Um, I was told by other people when I was able to open up to someone, they was like, well, you have 2 kids, you're young, you have a husband. How are you going to leave the comforts of that space? A lot of women don't leave. They just stay. Why won't, and she told me, this particular person told me, why won't you just stay? Other women stay. You'll get over it. Like, it'll get better at some point. And I'm just like, does she realize what I go through, what I go home to every day? Like, I, you know, this is not how I think it's supposed to be. Like, this is no way. And at that point also I wasn't really strong in my faith. So I wasn't really like a praying woman. Um, my faith probably was shaken so much. I didn't grow up in church. I knew about God, but I didn't really have a sense of who he was until later on in my life. So with being naive or just not really having a sense of understanding about believing and having faith, I just took things in my own hands, and I just made the decision to end my marriage, and that's what I did. And at that point, I'm kind of skipping a little ahead because I wound I wound up meeting my third child's father in the midst of being separated. I wasn't all the way divorced, but I knew my marriage was over because at that point he had already moved out and stuff, but I wasn't technically divorced. I was just separated. So I met him in the midst of being separated, and I wound up getting pregnant like 3 months after meeting him. And like I said before, I just made poor choices in how I did things when I was young because, like I said, not having my dad, not growing up without a dad, not really having like really being taught like how a young girl, a woman's supposed to be and how she's supposed to conduct herself, I just went with the flow of things and not really having standards or really, like I said, a self esteem about myself or loving myself enough to know that I deserve to be in a relationship that's healthy and nurturing and not just meeting people and just doing that. So I wound up getting pregnant with my son 3 months after meeting his dad. He is 10 years younger than me.
Mm-hmm.
I told him my age. At that time, I had 3 kids. He knew about my separation. And honestly, I knew that wasn't a relationship I wanted to be in. I just wanted to have a baby. I always wanted to have many children. And I think it's just because I was looking for love.
Right.
I did grow up with my mom, but because of the things that she was dealing with, I always felt alone. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, she was there and she told me she loved me and stuff like that, but I just felt alone because maybe what I needed from my dad and just certain things I needed from her as my mom, maybe they couldn't give it to me at that point. But as a child, you don't know how to really digest that. You just don't.
Right.
Um, so looking for love in all the wrong spaces with men, um, I find myself pregnant again. And when I went to go get my divorce, he had already filed what is it called? Like when you it's like when you ending it, it's like something like not cheating, it's called something else where um I can't think of what it is, but basically, because I wasn't all the way divorced and I had got pregnant while still being married, I think it's called adultery. So
Mm-hmm.
he had filed like adultery on me, and I think at that point, I don't know, I had to pay something, but yeah, it was like he had filed adultery on me because I was still married to him. And honestly, I really didn't care because I'm like, all the stuff I've been through with him, what he put me through. I'm not saying I'm a victim. I'm not saying I'm perfect. But what I am saying is that it's certain things that I feel like I didn't deserve. You know, I'm not saying that I was perfect Patty, but I didn't deserve certain things.
Right.
So I was just like, okay, I'll take that because yes, you're right. I was separated, but I'm still married. So by law, this is adultery. You're right. Okay. Even though there's shame in that, and I felt shame, but I didn't feel shame with being pregnant and having my son, because he's a blessing. And unfortunately, how it came along, it wasn't in the right way, but, a child is a blessing nonetheless.
Right.
So I took those stripes and I dealt with that, got my divorce. And it was hard because I really loved him and I really wanted my marriage to work. But I don't think as a woman I was strong enough to really keep it together or knew enough on how to keep it together, because without the right guidance and people telling you like, okay, you should go do this. We did go to counseling like for a month, but then he stopped going because he told me we didn't really need it. We were okay. I did try to get him help with his substance abuse with alcohol. I even shared it with his family. He was in denial about it. Oh, it's not that bad, but you're drinking every day and you're passing out and you're stealing money and we're not paying the bills. There's a problem. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I felt like I did try, but maybe I didn't try hard enough. But when you know that you are choosing certain things and you're not allowing God to choose those things for you, you really understand why things are coming to an end, because God was never a part of it anyway. So I was like, yeah, this is not it. Um, but I still loved him, even though I divorced him. I had my baby. I still loved him and I still kind of wanted to be with him. But I really think I was just vulnerable because having a baby and just not being with that person and just getting a divorce too on top of that, it created a space in me of vulnerability. So I think I was vulnerable. I do think I still loved him, but I think I was also more vulnerable than anything. So I did ask for us to be back together. He rejected it. He told me like, well, I would get back with you, but you just had a baby with someone else. And as a man, I can't take that. I think it's like a pride thing. So, you know, he rejected me. That hurt because I still wanted to be with him. So, really just taking time for myself, I just realized, like, you know what? Maybe I just need to get me together and stop jumping to people and really just isolate myself and really listen to the voice of God and really hear what God needs me to do in this season and in this space. Because what I'm doing in my own way obviously isn't working. So I did take some time for myself, focused on my children, was working, you know, I joined the church, just really tried to, like I said, get me together and all of that stuff. But, sometimes, the enemy sees you doing good and then he kind of gives you that desire. Like, okay, let me slide this person in. So I was doing good for a while, I started feeling happy and, thriving and stuff. But then I kind of creep back into my old habits of just couldn't get away from men. I don't know how else to really put it. I'm trying to dress it up nice, but um I just couldn't get away from that part of activity that I was in. So I wound up getting into another relationship maybe a year and a half after divorcing. Um and that relationship was literally the same relationship that I was in the other three times. I met him, got pregnant the next month. He moved in, and then after my daughter was born, the abuse started. The lying started, the cheating started. I really was just like, okay, is all men like this, or is it something that I'm attracting? Is there something a part of me? Is there something about me that brings this or something? Because I'm not an abusive person. I have not cheated on anyone. I don't take from people. But why am I always getting this types of men. I couldn't understand it until I really sat and reflected and thought, like, I think what's showing up is what hasn't been healed. And part of my
Yes.
childhood, what I experienced with my parents, also how my birth dad is and what I saw from him. He was abusive to my mom. Like just certain things that I saw as a child and like I said, growing up in certain spaces and how my parents were. I think because I was unhealed from that, I thought I was healed. You know, you move on, stuff you thinking that you're okay, but inside you're not. It's still an open wound. So realizing that wound was still open. I think that's why it kept showing up in different
Mhm.
people. Because I'm like, there's no way I'm like this. You know, they say you attract who you are. I'm like, I'm not abusive. I never abused anyone. You
Mhm.
know, I'm a nice person. I love people. Like, I don't hurt no one. Not even my children. I yell at them a little bit, but I don't act like this. So who have I cheated on? So there was a part of me that wasn't healed. And that's why I kept showing up. Um, So going through that with him, the abuse and all of that stuff, I wound up ending that relationship, you know, taking some time to just say, you know what, okay. Because that relationship really taught me like, oh no. Like I can remember a time when I was at work and my daughter had fell out of her swing and she was probably maybe 5 months old or something like that. And at the time my older daughter, she was like 13. And so my child's father, he calls me and tells me like, oh yeah, your daughter, she hurt the baby and we gotta take her to the hospital. He made a big deal out of nothing. Wound up taking the baby to the hospital. She was fine. There was no bruises, no cuts, nothing on her. She just fell. But she was right in the living room. She just fell out of the thing. But he made such a big deal about it. He wanted me to like beat my daughter and like do something to her. Like that's not me. That's not in my norm because I don't hit my children. I don't beat them. I um I don't do certain things with my kids because I think part of it is because I don't like violence
Mhm.
and it's almost like a trigger for me. So I choose to do the opposite of that. So I'm not saying I tolerate a lot because I really do have good kids. But obviously, they have their moments and stuff. But me beating a child is not who I am. Because I have a real soft and calm demeanor about myself. That's not me. And I was like, no, she didn't. The baby's fine, and she didn't mean to do it. She was crying and saying she was sorry, and I'm like, I knew in my heart that my daughter was sorry and she was empathetic about it. But he just wanted me to be like so vicious towards her, and I didn't have it in me to be that way.
Mhm.
I didn't have it in me. I couldn't even bring him to myself to even yell at her. Um, because I treat like people, even with my children, because they're people. Even though
Right.
they're my children, they're still human beings. So I couldn't bring them to myself to do that to her. But I knew in that moment that if somebody say they love me, why would you want me to hurt my child? Like, and that the child, our baby, is fine. She's been checked out. Nothing's wrong with her. But you still want me to be so vicious towards my daughter, like that's not cool with me. You get that mother protection on you, like a mother protects their cubs, like their children. We get that mommy mode on us, like we're gonna protect what's ours.
That's right.
So you know, yeah, I'm gonna protect what's mine. Like no, that's my baby. I'm not gonna hurt her like that. So I was like, yeah, it's this gotta go. This gotta end. This is not for me. So yeah, I wound up ending that relationship, and going about my way. But then at that point, I had to go stay with my grandmother because I didn't have the income enough to get my own place. So I wanted to stay with my grandmother and graciously she allowed me to stay with her because she didn't have a lot of space. She had a not a big house, like a small house, but my grandmother's a blessed. I love her. She's 91. She brought my mom in the world, so I always love her. She's just an
Yes.
amazing woman. I love her so much. I've always been close to my grandmother from a child. She actually always lived with us until I was about in high school. But yeah, I love my grandmother, and she took me and the kids in, and it was wonderful living with her and stuff. It was no problems. Me and my grandmother always get along. It's no problem with that. So I wound up getting my own place after that. After a couple months, I was able to move out and get my own place. At that time, my firstborn, he was in college. He was going to Coppin University, but he was coming home every weekend just to be with us and stuff. So that was going good for a while. And like I said, I always feel like when you kind of just get yourself together and get into a good space, you just kind of flying and blossoming. The enemy, I'm not saying keep blaming this on the enemy. It just seemed like something just tries to come in your way to derail you or to take you off course from what you're doing. So, after about maybe a year or two, me and the kids in our own apartment, we're doing good and everything. I wind up meeting the person that I'm with now. That's my daughter's father. So I have a child with him. Shortly, not too long after meeting him, getting into that relationship with him, I did go through some things in this current relationship that showed up again. Not really like abuse or anything, but more so like I did go through some cheating with him that he was dealing with, and been together 6 years. So in the beginning, the first 2 years, it was like the cheating thing was going on. So I was dealing with that. We kind of dealt with it, grew from that space to where we are today. Um, it's not everything or, where I really wanted to be. I want to be married and stuff like that. But, he's like, I don't know, I want to be married, and because he was married before. So we're just together. We'll see how things go with that. But one thing I will say was different with this relationship to where the other relationships is that the abuse thing is not happening. And just the treatment and how he is with me versus how I was treated in those other relationships is different. Because he's really good with my kids. He doesn't, make me feel like I got to do this or do that to them to, make him feel good or whatever. Um, he's good to me. And, also around the time I met him, he had just lost his mother. He lost his mom in 2019,
Mhm.
and he lost his dad back in 2003. And I lost my mom and my stepdad in 2020. So, you
Sorry.
know, he was able to really help me get through that space of grief because I've lost other people. Like I lost a best friend, and I've lost some aunts. I've lost some uncles when I was younger. My grandmother had 10 kids. She lost six. She has four living. So, and my mom was her youngest. So, I kind of knew what grief was about in the space of grief, but I didn't fully understand it until I lost them. So, which brings me to 2020 also was, well, actually COVID started in 2019, I believe. Um, so the world dealing with COVID and stuff like that, my mom and my stepdad actually retreated to Georgia back in 2015 because my mom said God called her on a mission to leave Baltimore to go to Georgia. So that's where my parents had retreated to, and they were there for like 16. Well, it was 2015. I don't know. They was there for almost like 10 years. Maybe they went there in 2012 or something like that. They went there in like 2012. So they were there for a long period of time. Um, and our relationship was able to be restored, because my mom was able to get herself together, and the things that she was dealing with, she was able to heal from that and grow, and then she was able to get herself. She grew herself enough in the Lord, and she became a pastor. Her and my stepdad was ordained pastors. They had a ministry in the state that they reside in, so they was doing God's work down there. Our relationship got better over the years. We were able to heal and mend those rough patches that we had with each other, through our vulnerability as mother and daughter. So around COVID, my mom came in town because I had my daughter in 2020. I didn't know I was pregnant with her. I didn't know what was going on with me. I went to the doctors February 1st of 2020, and they told me I was pregnant. So I wound up having her in September of 2020. My mom came in town. She saw all the births of my children except for um, my youngest daughter and my second to youngest daughter. And I was think through COVID restrictions and stuff. So she came in town after I had my baby, spent time with us. And what was so interesting about that visit, because normally for 10 years, my parents for 10 years was coming back and forth from Baltimore to Georgia. They was doing all that. But this time it was kind of different. They stayed a little longer than they normally do. And one of the conversations that I had with my mom, she was saying to me, she asked me, Patrice, are you going to have another child? And I was like, I'm not sure. I was like, maybe. She was like, okay. She was like, well, we're not coming back up here for a long time. I was like, okay, but I knew at that point that they were kind of like tired of the road. Like, my parents are not young. My stepdad is in his 70s. So, I'm like, I understand, you're getting older, kind of tired of that road stuff. So I was like, okay, I understand. Cause she had already told me about this like months before, like, y'all got to start coming down there, all that stuff. So I was like, yeah, mom, I know. And she was like, yeah, we're not going to come back up here for a long time. So I was like, okay. So that was that. We had Thanksgiving. And then I remember at work, I had just went back to work because I was on maternity leave from August until December the 12th. I'm sorry, to December the 10th. So I had got a phone call while I was at work, and was by her one of her friends, but she's a godmother to her friends' children. And she was calling me like, have you talked to your mom today? And I was like, no, I talked to her the previous day. I was like, but she told me when I was talking to her that she was supposed to come to your party or something with her children. And she was like, yeah, your mom. I talked to your mom a little while ago. She said she was on the road with her husband, heading my way to come, to the party. But that was about 4 o'clock. And at this point, it had been about an hour later or something. I was like, well, just give them some time. They'll get there, And honestly, in my mind, I'm not worrying. I'm like, okay, just give them some time. She was like, yeah, but their phone is kind of going to voicemail right now. And that's not like your mom, or she would call me back. Like, I was like, well, just give them some time. I'm sure everything is okay. So I'll go back working because, thinking everything's fine. She texted me like, well, Patrice, her phone is still going to voicemail. And I'm starting to become concerned because at this point, it's like 2 hours later, it's around 7 p.m. So going on 7 o'clock. So I was like, okay, well, let me try to call somebody else. So I did try to call her, did go to voicemail. I actually texted my mother, was like, are you guys okay? I didn't get a response. I said, let me wait about an hour because one thing I know about my mother, she's going to respond to me. At some point, she's going to respond. So I wait about a good hour and a half, and I didn't get a response from her, and still the phone is going to voicemail. And I was like, what's going on? But I couldn't do too much because I'm at work, so I had to just keep working. I inboxed her on Facebook because she wasn't answering her phone at that point. I inboxed her friend and was like, well, I tried to reach her. I asked her, was she okay? And I didn't get a response from them. So I said, I'm not really sure myself what's going on. But I said, well, if you hear from anybody or hear from her or whatever, just let me know. But I can't do too much because I'm working. Maybe after 30 or 40 minutes, she inboxed and said, okay. Well, I didn't hear back from her. The next call I got was 3 hours later, and it was from my nephew. Now, my nephew was living with my mom at that point. He was staying down there with her for a while, her and my stepdad. So the next call was from him. And this was going on like 11, close to 12 o'clock, close to it, but not exactly.
Right.
So I knew something was wrong. Because you know how you just don't get certain phone calls? Like, you just don't, you know? So I knew something was wrong. Something about this call just does not right. Because I'm like, my nephew don't call me. So, like, what's going on? So I was like, hey, so you good? How are you? It's like, and I could tell by his voice, he could barely talk. I was like, and I had to actually keep saying his name, like, I can't hear you. Like, can you like talk? Because he was a mess. And, my mom's co-pastor, like her overseer, he got on the phone because my nephew just really couldn't say it. He got on the phone. He said, Patrice, your parents, yeah, they're at the hospital. And I said, okay, are they okay? Like, I mean, can I get the room number? Like, what happened? I said, well, what happened? And it was like, well, your parents were in an accident. And I said, okay, they were in an accident. I said, is my mom okay? I said, well, where hospital are they at? Can y'all, give me some information about that? And he tells me they didn't make it.
Oh, man. I'm so sorry.
I needed him to tell me that again because I didn't think I heard him correctly. He was like, Patrice, your parents didn't make it. And I lost it. And I was at work, like amongst a lot of people at work. Right. I dropped the phone and I just lost it. It felt like an instant movie. Like I couldn't believe what he just told me because I'm like, okay, accidents do happen, mainly people make it through it. I just could not believe that he told me that they didn't make it. I was like, are you sure it was, I couldn't believe it. So, my world instantly became upside down because to lose two people in the same time, and not only did they not make it, no one did, because the driver that hit my parents, they all were killed.
Oh man.
No one made it. And what happened is that my parents took a different route because they were trying to get to the party quicker. And Georgia traffic is crazy from what I hear. Right. So, yeah, they were trying to get to the party. So my stepdad was trying to find a different route to take. And it was a head-on collision. Wow. And the coroner told us that, because once I got myself together and I could gather my thoughts, I was asking, like, what, is my mother okay? Like, I knew she was gone, but I think I was trying to ask, did she suffer? Right. And the coroner was telling us that it was instant. Okay. God took them instantly. Like, your parents, almost like they didn't know what happened. It just kind of just happened. So there was no need for an autopsy or anything like that. It was just like an instant thing. Because I needed that instant peace that my mom was okay, that she was okay. Even though I know she's not, because she's not, here. I'm trying to make sense of it, like that she didn't suffer. Is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I needed to know that because that was important for me, to know. So he said, no, she didn't suffer. It just happened too fast. It was a drunk driver. The guy was young. He was on his way home, and like I said, he kind of came in their path, and that's how that happened. It did make the news in Georgia. I didn't want to know everything because that's my mother and my parents. I didn't want to know everything, but they had to be sawed out of the car. It was just stuff I just didn't want to know. Um, so yeah, then we had to retrieve their bodies, and bring them home to Maryland to be buried and stuff. So me seeing my mother for the first time in their space, because I didn't know how I was going to respond or be at the funeral, because it was just so heavy for me. And I didn't realize that grief has different stages to it.
Right.
This denial, it's the anger. I didn't realize that, because there was certain points I was just screaming, like, why? Angry, just like bitter, and just all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, when I was at the funeral, I had a sense of peace about myself. I was surprised that I had so much calmness and peace. And I just think that was God showed the protection on me. I felt like I had to be strong for everybody else.
Right.
And I just had a sense of peace about myself. And closing a casket on a woman that raised you, that been there and watched you give birth to children, that was something. But it was like a real surreal moment. It was like a surreal moment. I just couldn't get my emotions together. I was just there, but it was just so surreal.
Right.
I dealt with a lot after losing them, because I went through depression, severe depression. I became bitter, angry. When I'm telling you the anger that I had in me, it was top level anger, where I disliked everybody. I was angry with everyone. And I think it was just because I was hurt.
Right.
I was hurt. Yeah, I stopped talking to people. I isolated myself. I was very depressed. I didn't go to therapy until like the second year, because, like I said, I was like, what are they going to tell me? And just having that thought of like, people just want to say things that you think you want to hear, but they don't really care. And, she didn't know my mom, and, all those things, but it's not any of that. It's really your way of getting what's out in you, getting it out, and having someone listen to you. Just being vulnerable in that space. It's not about someone telling you what you want to hear. It's just about being vulnerable in that space. And it took me a long time to want to do that, but I knew it was necessary for my healing and for my growth. And I'm a mom. My children need me. My purpose needs me. People need me. My mom and my parents that are looking above, they need me to continue to go on. They need me to survive. They need me to make it.
Right.
So I knew I can't succumb to my emotions too much, or allow myself to just be in that space, because it's not going to do me no good, and it's not going to do my children no good. So, with a lot of, and I remember having a conversation also with my pastor, and I remember she has the same name as my mother too, and I remember telling her, she said, I'm so sorry, Patrice, you're going through this. I heard about your mom and stuff, but she said to me, she said, Patrice, I don't really know what to tell you, but I'm gonna tell you that it's going to be a minute. This is going to be a minute.
Yeah.
I didn't get what she meant by that, but she said, this is going to be a minute. And I realized that this is going to take some time to heal, to heal yourself, because this is not something that you're okay tomorrow, where the world keeps going and stuff. But you're like, hey, wait a minute, I'm not okay. I'm not okay, world. Can we like give me a moment to catch up to you guys? Because I'm not okay yet. But the world don't work like that, because the healing is your responsibility. It's for you to do the work.
That's true.
And because I know the type of grandmother that my mom was and how they were with the grandchildren. That was probably out of everything, the most hurtful part was, damn, my mom loved these grandkids. She loved them. You know, that hurt. That hurt bad. My daughter graduated from high school and she cried and I cried because we knew my mom was looking forward to that day of seeing her grandchild walk across the stage, and it was hurtful, you know, but we know that my mom is smiling down. Her spirit lives on. It took me a while to even visit the grave, to go to where she's buried at. Well, they're both are buried at. They're both buried next to each other. Um, but it just took a while because I'm her baby.
Hmm.
You know, that's my mommy. I still call her mommy. Like I've always called her mommy. Like even as a grown woman, like that's my mommy.
Right.
I'm her baby. So it hurt. It hurt. It hurt bad. You know, I shared everything with my mother. She knew everything, everything. I never left anything untold with her. She was the person that I could be the most vulnerable with.
Hmm.
The most vulnerable with. She knew everything. I told her. I talked to my mother about everything. I talked to her on the phone almost every other day, especially as we healed our relationship. It got stronger, it got better. She was my number one supporter. She helped me through some tough seasons. I mean, and my mother always used to tell me, Patrice, as long as I'm here, you're going to be okay. Like,
Right.
and to lose that, my thoughts was, well, what do I do now, God? My mom always said, as long as she's here, I'm okay. Well, what am I supposed to do now? Because I don't have her. But God said, I have you. I got you. And God has been taking care of me and He has me. I haven't missed a meal. I mean, me and my kids have been thriving. I mean, we're good.
Hmm.
Obviously the hurt is still there. It doesn't go away.
Right.
Um, but you learn to live with it, and you learn to live with it in a more healthier space. Like I have my days, I do, and I go through my emotions. Like I was saying to you earlier, like just losing them right before Christmas and giving birth to my daughter the same year, and even in the same short of time, and then losing them. That was like interesting and tough. So, and her birthday's next month. Both of my parents' birthdays next month. So, stuff like this kind of brings back certain emotions and stuff. But once again, I know how to channel it differently now. I
Hmm.
honor her through how I live my life. Um, Even though she's not here, the things that she's taught me, it stays with me.
Right.
Um, I keep a mental note of those things and just, sharing, just talking about her sometimes. I feel like that's a way of keeping her memory alive. And, I hope and pray that I'm making her happy. And I believe I am, but I just want to continue to do that because I can't speak for everybody and how they feel about their mom or their parents and things like that. I know everybody don't have the best relationship with their mother, but I can only say for me that I've been blessed to have a mother that was always there. Like I said, we've had our challenges and things like that, but she was always there for me. And I will always honor her and I will always respect her. Always.
Right.
Um, it is my duty to do that.
See.
Um, yeah. So,
And I say this, I'd be like, even though
mhm,
our parents aren't with us in the
mhm,
physical, they
mhm,
are with us. All you have to do is remember. You remember is when you're putting it back together again. Every time
okay.
you hear your mom speaking, do you hear her voice?
Yes.
She's always with you.
Uh,
That's how it is. It's like when I hear my dad, I think of something he says, I hear his voice. So all we have to do is sit back and just know that they are with us because we are them. They are us. They're only disconnected right now in the physical realm.
mhm.
So you make sure you go inside. We have to remember to go inside
Yeah, because I can even remember there's times like where I would have dreams and she well it took a while for her to come to my dreams, but like there's times where she would come to my dreams and just it just feels good, to like see her and stuff like that. And like you said, it's just different relationship, but the connection is still there.
Right.
And I found myself just doing things like her, and she's in my house. As soon as I walk in the house, right in my living room, there's a big picture of my mom. So, um, I'm grateful to God that I came from her, and I really didn't realize how much I loved her. Um, until it wasn't there anymore in the space that she was existing in. But the lessons and her teaching will always stay with me. And one thing I know for sure, she always like Patrice, live your purpose, live your truth, and always, do what's right. So I keep a mental note of that. I'm not perfect, but I do keep a mental note of that. And that's why I said it's just really important for me to, carry her memory on through how I live my life and how I teach my kids and what I do with them, and all that stuff. It's just very important to me um, to do that. So yeah, like I said, it's hard. It's hard because you just miss. My mom was a good hugger. Just miss certain things, and you just know how they were, just in certain ways, and with the children and stuff. But I've come to a place where I handle it differently, and I handle the grief of it all differently. I no longer allow myself just consumed with that and just not getting the healing that's needed, because it's important to grow and it's important to be who you're supposed to be for your children, for yourself, and that they want you to be happy. They want you to thrive in life. They want you to be everything you're supposed to be. They don't want you to be sad all the time and depressed, and because that's not going to do anybody any good. It's not going to bring them back or nothing like that. So you go through those emotions, but not to get stuck in it.
Right.
Um, so that's just where I'm at for me. So I just pray that through my story and my experiences, that it really does help somebody um, to overcome whatever they're dealing with and their challenges. And maybe they have lost a loved one and they don't know how to get through that um, grief process. Just seek help, therapy, a trusted friend, someone, a relative, someone that that will be able to protect your heart in this space. Um, with your hurt and what you're going through, because I think that's important too, because you might think that certain people care, or just like you be so open or vulnerable with people, but then you realize they really don't care.
Mhm.
There's you know so certain things in life will show you people, and yeah, I've been down that road too. So I think it's important to really just be wise in your choices and just listen to that inner talk, that inner being of you, like, okay, this is who I should talk to, this is who I should not. Um yeah, because that's definitely where I'm at. My space and my circle of friends is very small because you just can't trust everybody. um but yeah, I think I'm doing better now. I'm finally trying to get myself back in a space where I am living my purpose with sharing my story, just rebuilding myself and my brand, because I had a skincare line many years ago, but I kind of stopped that, and then I was just doing something else. And I stopped that because my mom was like a real supporter of my brand, and when she wasn't a part of that, I just couldn't pick it back up again. Just hurt too much. So, just trying to like rebrand myself now, um, just to get refocused. I have been getting refocused for some time now, because, like I said, when I was going through my depression, I put everything on hold. All I did was going to work, and that was it. Like I was like, I don't want to. Yeah, just mm-mm.
Mhm.
So realize that, yeah, being depressed for too long is just not what's up. That's not good. Um, I got work to do in this world. It's stuff that needs to happen. I gotta keep it moving. And when you look in your children's face and they need you to make it, they need you to survive. They need you to be okay because when you're okay, they're okay. Um, and I know my mom loves her grandchildren, so it's better. It's for me to be the best mom I can be for them, as well. So yeah, no, I mean, just doing stuff like this and being a part of your podcast, just really allowing myself to just really um grow, you know, as much as I can do. I got myself back in school. I got myself back in school like a year ago. So I'm in school for business. So I've been doing that, taking some classes and stuff. So, I'm proud of myself. I'm making some steps to
And just
do.
hearing your
To
story, I
do.
can say I'm proud of you too. I can hear the
Thank you.
steps. I
Thank
can literally hear it, and I'm like this. Get back on your mission, because I
you.
would love to be one of the first people to buy one of your products.
Yeah, I want to get back into like the beauty business, and I'm thinking about creating like a edge control line. So I'm trying to get like trying to really patent that and get back. I just want to get back into my passion and things that really put a smile on my face because I lost my smile because of the grief.
Right.
Um, but I can't allow myself to be absorbed in that because it's not good for no one. Um, so yeah, so I'm getting back into all of those things, and God's grace is always sufficient. Um, and with my parents being pastors, and them teaching me certain things about the Word, and just that had made me get even deeper with God. But what I would say is, when I did lose them, I questioned certain things. But God is always knowing. It's not for us to question. You just have to just pray and believe that He knows best. He knows best. Um, so my faith has definitely been restored. Um, yeah, I'm just doing the best I can do and raising my children, being the best person that I can be, and choosing to be happy because I believe happiness is a choice. So I think, me choosing to be happy and making steps towards that every day as much as I can, um, is what's needed for
Hmm.
my journey because it's been a journey. Oh, it's been a journey.
It's
But,
awesome, awesome
I have a
story.
daughter. She's in her third year college. She's in for nursing, so she's in her third year. My oldest, he's doing good. He has his own place, his own car, no children. He's 24 years old. Um, my son, he lived with me from the time I had him up until he turned about 23. Yeah.
Hmm.
See, I wasn't one of those parents like, oh, you got to go at
Me
18.
neither. Me neither. I'm like, y'all can live with me forever.
No, because like I was saying when I was telling you how I started, I was like, I don't think they're ready for the
Yes,
real
they're
world.
not. They're
They're not.
not.
What do
They're
they know at 18? Let's think of what.
they're not ready.
They're not ready. And honestly, I feel like if if they have a plan and they're like, okay, I'm doing this, then your children's not just laying around not doing nothing. Like, okay, they're up, they're working, and they're being self sufficient. What's the problem with letting them stay with you for a couple more years? I don't see it as a problem. Like, I'm not the parent, oh, you got to go. Like, no, I'm not going to push my child out there unprepared, and they
That's what
don't
it
know.
is.
Yeah,
Unprepared. The thing is, we have to make sure it's our job to make sure our children are ready to go out there. So don't let them just sit around and do anything. Make sure they are learning the necessary tools to go out there and be great men and women. Because if you just push them out there and then they're fending for themselves, they're in survival mode now.
exactly. To the kid, they're survival mode, so they're going to do anything, any means necessary to make it
Hmm.
because they don't know what else. They don't know nothing else. They don't, so I just think that notion of when your child turn 18, then they need to leave the nest, and like whoever started that, like they need to cut it out because that's not, no, they don't know.
That's true.
No. We gotta give them the tools. We gotta when they're young and they're children, you kinda teach them how to be as children, how to be, when you're young, and then but you also gotta prepare them for being young adults, you
Right.
know? You gotta don't stop. You gotta prepare them. So that's what I did with my son. When he was living with me, teaching about finances and about credit, and definitely about credit, um, and just paying your bills on time and all those things, that a lot of times these young kids really don't know, and they get themselves all caught up. So yeah, my son's 24 now, no kids, working full time. Just got his own place, bought his first car. Yes, you
Awesome.
know. Yeah, I'm proud because I had my son so young where people were telling me that, oh, your life is you ruined your life, and oh my goodness, this is the worst thing you could have done, having a baby at a young age. And I'm not saying that you should have a baby at a young age.
Mhm.
That's not to be a goal or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that you can overcome that. You can still make it even with having a child at a young age. Because my son is doing good, and
Right.
he is not what society thought he was going to be as a young and as a black man as well. He's not. So not only did I beat the odds, so did my son. Now
Mm-hmm.
take that, world.
Well, we do got a couple of questions if you are able to answer. First, before I
Oh,
ask these questions, is there anyone that want to come up and share some encouraging words or anything, or I'll just read the questions. If you would like to come up for maybe a couple of minutes and share, I will drop the link. Other than that, we will continue on. I'll give you a couple of seconds and I'm gonna drop the link, and if you catch it, awesome. If not, we'll continue on.
check this.
I'll go back up here to the questions there at the top.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Can I just use this for school tomorrow for my hair? Okay.
I was just at it. All right. So one question is, what have you done to address the trauma this far?
Well, first, going to therapy. That's the first thing that I've done to address the trauma. Um, okay. Being in therapy for a few months really opened my eyes to how we are as human beings, how we operate through patterns and comfortability and through habits. So just being able to identify certain behaviors about myself and why I do certain things, and also um, how my childhood was connected to my choices. Um, I was able to really address those things. I think when it comes to trauma, it's it's a process that continues on because the wound is there, but it has to be healed, but the wound is there. So it's like you forgive your past, but you don't forget it. So with that being said, it's like a story that you can tell, but you're not living it. So like I said, with me, addressing my trauma was going through therapy and really just growing my relationship with God, because I feel like God has been there all my life, even
Mhm.
though my relationship wasn't strong. I didn't grow up in church or anything like that. but I watched how my parents went from not being, not going to say they wasn't believers, but not really being embedded in church or really having that as their foundation, to having that as their foundation, becoming pastors and really growing with God in that avenue, and introducing that space to me, and me growing with them and healing certain things in our relationship, and dealing with certain traumas that I've experienced with them, helped me to really go to God with all of that as well, and just being vulnerable, crying out, um, reading His Word, really just channeling channeling my mind in a positive way with what I read, with what I watch, my behavior, who I surround myself with. Um, yeah, just those, all of that stuff. I believe that's how I've been able to address my trauma, and knowing my worth and who I am as a woman, as a person, um, also helped me too. I went to a conference many years ago. Elanya Venzette, she had a conference in Maryland,
Mm.
and I remember she said something at her conference that kind of stuck with me, and she said, "You matter. What you do matter, and you matter." I never knew that I mattered, even though it's like you would know that you matter, you would think you know that, but I didn't realize that I actually mattered. I was like, oh, I do matter, because I thought everybody else did,
Mm-hmm.
but me, because of how my choices and how I put people pleasing and just putting people before me and their feelings and all of that stuff, tolerating certain things in relationships, um, going through things in my childhood. I never thought I mattered.
Right.
I put myself last. Everybody was first. So just addressing those things really helped me get through my trauma. And like I said, the wound is still there, but um, I'm able to just challenging it in a different way. Yeah.
Hi, Misty. Welcome in.
Peace and blessings. Hi, Sister
Hi.
Patrice.
Hi.
So I didn't know you can come on here until I heard Queen Jamie say that. I'm like, what? I could get on
Yes,
here?
ma'am.
Y'all know I'm not the technology person. So Queen Jamie, you know what? This. I just sit back. I just gotta say this, because if I don't miss the opportunity to encourage my sisters.
Right.
I don't care how I look. I had to go, get presentable. But I didn't plan on this. But it's a beautiful thing from this end, from where I sit, and see our sisters be so vulnerable onto the world, right? Let's face it, because there's a lot of followers. There's
Right.
also a lot of people watching. And whether they comment or not, I know that these stories are helping many sisters, and it's also a release, right? When you come on and talk, that's a form of psychotherapy. That's why you said you can get a friend, even if you don't choose therapy. Like, I'm big on therapy. Get to the couch. Like, find someone you could trust. Like, I'm an advocate for the couch. But I want to say to you, sister, listening to your story, as I have with I've listened to every single story on this channel, and just the resilience, right? When you talk about women, just women as a whole, but I have to put emphasis on, there's nothing like the strength of a Black woman.
Right.
And when you understand that, there's nothing that'll ever stop you. Right? Nothing
Mhm.
that'll ever stop you. We got the ancestors to prove it, right? We
All
stand
right.
on a strong backs. But I want to send my condolences. I can only imagine the tragedy behind that, because I experienced that with my grandmother as well. And nobody is teaching us how to cope with death, right? Someone passes away,
That's
we go to
justice.
the funeral, we go to the
Give it to me.
repast, and then everybody go
Mhm.
to their corners trying to figure out how to process grief. When
Mm-hmm.
really we should be coming together as a whole, right? Because everybody just freezes. It's central nervous system impacted. Oh, the freeze. And so we really need to educate on this. And what you said, I'm just sitting back like, this is that you have a lot of knowledge. And I just want to encourage you to keep sharing your knowledge, find other platforms, keep using your voices. And we love you. We
That's
love
right.
you. I love you, right? See, we have to understand love too, right? Because see, sisters don't understand. I tell all my sisters I love them. I'm not afraid. And I don't say love you. I put the I in front of it.
That's right.
Meaning, you know what I'm saying? But then I notice a lot of sisters have a hard time saying it because they're just not used to strange sisters saying they love them and could really mean it, because we've lost that trust within us. So I think platforms like this, what Queen Jamie is doing, is bridging some of these gaps. And when we can be vulnerable onto each other, we can be a support to each other.
Mhm.
Amen.
Amen.
Or Amen Ra. No.
That's right.
Let me get off here.
Ashe. Ashe. We'll say
know
Ashe.
me. Right on. So I love you, Queen Jamie. I love you, Sister Kendra. And Sister, you just keep pushing. There's energy in the chat. I want to give a shout out to her. Her story was powerful as well. The sister last night. Keep coming back. Keep supporting other sisters. And this is how we grow. And it's 22 minutes. So I know Queen Jamie don't like to keep it over an hour. So peace out, fam.
Oh, you're good. I knew you were gonna come up and spread your light on this panel. So I was like, let me just see.
That's what I'm here for. Rain or shine, hair not combed or not, eyebrows not filled in. I'ma love on y'all.
Listen, you did not disappoint. You did not disappoint.
Thank you, Queen Jamie.
And
y'all
I
have a peaceful rest.
You as well. Thank you.
Peace.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, she is? Okay.
All right. So I want to thank you. Thank you for coming on my panel and telling your story and telling how you have overcame. Well, you're still overcoming. But it's awesome to see the steps that you have taken, where you are from where you came from is amazing. And again, you got to remember, this is a journey. This is not a marathon. It's a journey. So it may take some time. Make sure you're taking your time, and make sure you take some time out for yourself. Even if it's an hour out of the week, be like, this is my time. Put the kids to bed and be like, okay, this is what I do for me. This is for me. Don't let anybody take that little bit of time that's for you, because you deserve it.
Thank you.
You're doing a great work. And I say, keep speaking.
Okay.
Because your story is powerful and it is needed. And I want to thank everyone for coming out listening. Anyone under the sound of my voice, if you have a story that you would like to share, and you just need, because sometimes people don't need you to talk back with them. Some people just want to get it out. And so this panel is for, because it'd be like, sometimes I just want to get it out. I don't need you to really give me too much advice. I just need to speak.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you, and I thank you. I thank you I thank all the ladies for coming on this panel and speaking. And yes, Kendra, this is a safe place. You all have, y'all don't know, y'all warm my heart. Y'all have a special place in my heart. And I just can't thank you enough. And I definitely would love to have you back, because in the future, you know how you think ahead. I'm thinking of not only just having women tell their stories, but I'm also thinking of bringing up panels, because sometimes we can feed off each other. We can feed off each other, and there may be somebody that said something that sparks your mental. Be like, oh, I didn't think about it that way. And so also, I encourage you to reach out to Misty. I do have her information. It is scrolling in the chat, but I also have it on my community board if you would like to reach out to her. She's very powerful, as you can see just in that few minutes of her coming up on on the stage and speaking.
Okay.
But again, thank you all for coming out. Until next time, I do have another podcast scheduled for next week. I am going to hope everything goes according to plan, and I will see you then. Keep shining, keep rising, and remember, your story is your power. Bye.
Night.
Good
Bye.
night.